Medalist drops in about a week, so I wanted to make a quick meta roundup to mark the end of the start of Rivals of Aether 2. The game's received multiple meta shifts and patches since my last tier list, and tons of meta developments across dozens of tournaments. So I think now's the best time to talk about my thoughts and share my current tier list. To kick off the video, let's start by talking about what characters have received buffs and nerfs. Then, I think it would be a good time to chat about who's dominating in tournament play, and then we can end the video off talking about our tier list using the info that we've previously gathered throughout our video. If you're just here for certain parts of the video though, that's completely okay. I left chapters throughout it, so feel free to skip around. To start, let's check out the overall buffs and nerfs. I've made a few patch roundup videos that I left linked in the description of this video, so if you want the specifics, I have them there. But to save us all some time, I made a quick little chart showing the overall ups and downs of the tier list. I don't have any particular order in these tiers, but I think Claren's change to her knockback in the most recent patch, as well as recoveries across the board being made worse, makes her stand out as a clear winner of the patches. She's already been great at ledge trapping and ledge guarding, so you already had to recover pretty precisely against her, and now it's even easier for her to punish. I left Loxodon in the buff slightly tier. He didn't get a ton of changes, but being able to tech weaker hits helps his recovery out a ton. He doesn't get trapped off stage nearly as much anymore, and his kill power was made slightly more consistent. Esther, Maple, and Zetterburn are feeling super strong, and they're about the same tier. All of their recoveries got slightly changed, as well as a few moves changing how they work, whether it be Raster's up B not killing as early, Maple's Plant Lily removing the mark when it bites the shield, or Zetterburn's up strong receiving a few extra frames of lag. Overall, I don't think these changes really impact these characters' viability due to them being so small, but instead make them feel like they need to be piloted a bit more precisely. I also left Arcane here since I thought he wasn't super broken in the last meta update, and he's received a lot of changes. He got hit really hard in the early December patch, but received a good amount of compensation buffs or had some of the nerfs slightly reverted since then. There hasn't been a major since the compensation buffs, but he felt strong before his nerfs, and he feels strong after the buffs. However, the power in his kit definitely has shifted, so I think it'll take time for Arcane players to fully understand and determine how effective his new kit is. I could imagine him moving up or down a tier on this list over time. I have Rano, Crag, and Forsburn in the slightly nerfed tier. They all received small nerfs to their kit, like Rano's up tilt not being as safe, Crag's Rock being a little slower to use, and Forsburn's down air and back air being slightly less effective on shield. I think all these characters still feel really powerful in today's meta, but the tuning to their kits was definitely needed. I personally think these characters need slightly more tuning, but I think I'll talk about that in another video coming out later on this week. For our last character, I have Fleet. I don't think that Fleet was gutted by any means, and I originally had her in the slightly nerfed category, since she's still a strong fighter. But I felt that she was nerfed more compared to the characters in the tier above, and I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I spread misinformation about Rivals of Aether 2 on a YouTube video. Her air acceleration since our last meta update has been slowed slightly, and she can't float after grabbing ledge if she's already used float before. This means her ledge guarding is overall a good bit worse. It still feels pretty strong, but the Fleet player does have to be a lot more precise and use their resources wisely. I also think, however, the universal parry changes to projectiles makes calling out options with her strongs or her side B really risky for the player. The Fleet I play a lot in my region was known for tech chasing with forward strong, but now if I tech in some scenarios, I have time to threaten a parry, meaning it's not an option he's able to pick anymore without risking his stock for it. Really quickly, before we move on, if you're rocking with the content, why don't you show it some love? Leaving a like, comment, or even just subscribing goes such a long way for the algo. And it allows me to fund my grassroots events. I'm a tournament organizer from East Texas, and I host weekly online events on my Discord, as well as general matchmaking. The link's in the bio if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, but if not, that's totally cool. Let's get back to the video. Now that we're done with who's received buffs and nerfs, let's take a quick peek at who's dominating or lacking in the competitive scene. I looked at results across multiple large brackets, including coin boxes from December and January, and made another tier list showing what characters have been performing the best and worst. Admittedly, the most recent patch isn't the best reflected in this list, since there hasn't been any really massive brackets since that patch. However, I only think that actually affects 1 or 2 characters, and I think the rest of the list is pretty accurate. At the top, we have Zetter and Forceburn. These are the 2 most common characters currently used in majors. However, Forceburn did just receive a handful of nerfs like I mentioned, and there hasn't been a major since then. Imagine if he had those nerfs a few weeks ago, this data would be slightly more skewed and put him a little bit lower. Zetterburn, however, has dominated lots of events, populating tons of top 8s, and most notably this coin box is seen in the results graphic. Crag, Rano, and Clarin are all common to see reaching top 8s and top 16s. However, you don't see them take the crown quite as much as the tier above. These characters have lots of high level reps, and the characters themselves all feel at least strong enough to contend with the 2 brothers above them. Loxodon is sitting in a tier all by himself. I personally don't see him reach top 8s very often, but I do see a lot of Loxodons make it out of pools at big events. His number in top 64s are comparable to the tier above, but his numbers in top 8s simply aren't. I'm not sure if this is due to him being popular but weak, leading to top players not picking him up, or due to him having rough matchups into the characters seen above. Below Lox, we have Raster and Maple. These characters sometimes outpopulate Lox in top 64s and sometimes fall a bit below him, so I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to put Lox above or below them tier-wise. Just note they can be swapped up tournament to tournament. These 2 are both uncommon in the current meta, but when they are played, they tend to do pretty well. I imagine this is due to them being more difficult to use, or due to them not having as many reps currently, since the game is still newish, and they're pretty hard to play. I don't think their scores are due to them being weak. Our only really rare character here is Fleet. Her nerfs caused a lot of Fleet mains to either drop her or lose matchups where she wouldn't before. Fleet, however, has started to see a small rise over the course of the patches, and I think she's pretty close to being more balanced, so I can imagine her jumping up a spot or 2 here. Our last character is Orcane. Orcane, from the data I was able to gather, hasn't made it out of pools as a solo main since his nerfs. I did see one person play Orcane in pools 1 or 2 times and they made it out, but they primarily used other characters, so I don't think that fully counts, you know? As I mentioned earlier, this data is all sourced from before his buffs, so I don't think he's necessarily so risky to play in tournaments now, but since the last meta update, he just hasn't been showing up. I think this is both due to top Orcanes dropping him after the nerfs, as well as Marlin getting a temp ban that clears up soon. I'm excited to see him back in the meta, however. I don't think he'll be overly dominant, since before his nerfs he was also a rare character outside of Marlin's sets. Moving on to our actual tier list, I had a really hard time with this one. All the characters feel really strong right now, and no one stands out as a notable worst in game, as well as no best in game either, so each tier is very loosely ordered, if even that. Also, keep in mind that a patch changing Clarin, Forestburn, and Orcane just dropped, so their places are a little bit less concrete than everyone else. Let's start with the bottom this time and work our way up. In our lowest tier, we have Loxodon. I actually think Lox isn't in the worst spot right now balance-wise. Being able to wall tech weaker moves makes his recovery a lot better, and his kill power is a little more consistent after the most recent patch. Truthfully, he's only here in last place, since, as I said, I couldn't really think of anyone else who would be. I think he's super viable and strong, he's just lacking a little something to push him over the edge to being a bit overtuned. Next in this tier, we have Fleet. Fleet's fine right now, she's just not dominant, so I can't really move her up any higher. Her combos from when she was a big threat are all still there, and her kill power just got slightly buffed. I think she's great, however, it can be hard for her to win brackets due to speed demons like Maple and Rano matchup checking her pretty hard. To start our strong tier, we have Crag. Crag's super strong right now, but the recent recovery nerfs feel like they made his already ledge guardable recovery even more exploitable. This seems to be more of a glaring problem for him as well, since players are fully realizing how to fight against him. He's still super explosive, takes stocks mad early, and has a great neutral. So I don't think he's bad at all, I just think he's a lot harder to play at high and top level, especially whenever you consider how some of the other characters above can abuse his heavy weight and kinda combo him forever. Forestburn is up next. He would have been near the top of this list in the most recent patch, but with the shield pressure being tuned down, his spike being less consistent, and clone being a lot clunkier to use, I can't imagine putting him much higher. These nerfs might be over-exaggerated, and I imagine he will still see great results, but currently he seems a little bit less scary overall. To cap out our strong tier, we have Orcaine. I think he's really strong right now, especially with the recent buffs allowing up air to kill earlier, and back air to be a lot more consistent without any adjustments to how shockingly strong it is at kill percents. I didn't really want to put him in the very strong tier, since I think he has one of the worst recoveries in the game, but I think if Orcaine players fully figure out his complex advantage state and ledge guarding, he should climb a few spots on this list. Moving into our very strong tier, let's go ahead and start with Rano. Rano is a consistent threat to the meta due to how easily he can set up kills, whether it be from an aerial, strong, or a confirm from a tilt or throw. His forward air is probably one of the best moves in the game right now, with it both killing opponents off the side and opponents recovering low with the spike hitbox. I'm personally hoping for a few changes to his kit, but I think I'd like to talk about that in another video that I'll put out later on this week. After Rano, let's chat about Claren. I think the most recent round of buffs fixed Claren's biggest problem. She couldn't kill normally with raw moves, and what do you do when the confirms you need to take a stock just stop working? Now that she kills a lot more consistently, I don't really know what stops this character from being incredible. Out of everyone in this tier, she is the one that I can imagine rising the highest. Her lack of great frame data and get off me tools can be a problem, but I feel like her neutral's so oppressive from having the big disjoint that doesn't really matter in a lot of matchups. To cap off our very strong tier, we have Maple. Maple is one of the less represented characters in brackets, but I can't think of any top player who pilots her. She has the best juggling in the game, a good recovery, easy to hit kill confirms ranging from F-tilt, tether, nair, to up air, tether, up air, a good grab game, and a great tech chase game, as well as good ledge guarding and trapping. I'm not really sure what's holding this character back competitively, but I do wonder if some characters being easier and the game still being new plays a factor in her pick rate. Moving on to our top tier, I really couldn't decide who the best was. Zetterburn on one hand has tons of results and reps, while Raster is a lot rarer of a character with similar strengths. At the end of the day, I think it could really go to either of these characters, but I think Raster being harder to combo and ledge guard gives him a slight advantage here. Zetterburn obviously has great kill power, combos, DI mix-ups, and consistency. I think if you're a new player to the game and you want a character you can click buttons on, he is the cat for you. However, as I mentioned, his recovery being slightly worse does make life a little bit harder for him. I think he's really strong though, and his matchup chart's great. I would know, I actually just did a video on it that you can watch after this one's over. Raster also is super strong. His upbeat and aerials allow him to also take early stocks, and his combo game rivals Zetters. Haha, get it? I said rivals, and that's the name of the game. You should leave a like if you laughed. And his generally great edge guarding is insane, with both nair and forward strong killing off the side, and down strong checkmating opponents that are forced to go low. His only real flaw is his weight, and is that even really a real flaw if it makes him really hard to combo? I'd imagine not. I do think his difficulty is what's holding him back results-wise, and I wouldn't really argue that he needs a nerf, since he's not super dominant or common right now. But I do think he's incredibly strong and consistent for players who are able to use his great powers, landing him in our top tier. That just about wraps up my list. If you think I missed something, or maybe I got something wrong, let me know. I'll have a video out later on this week talking about the game's health, and both my hopes and worries for its future. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you should totally subscribe. Until next time, peace.